This is Alibaba. It is a site you can go to that basically is a matching service with Chinese factories. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, if you wanted to get something made in China, and I lived in China at the time, what you typically had to do is you had to go to China. And you would then, through introductions or some sleuthing process, you would find a factory, you would tour the factory, you would meet them, you would drink with them. There would be much more drinking. Some relatively disgusting foods would be forced upon you as a kind of a hazing ritual. And if all went well, you would then do a deal. And this required there may be a letter of credit, bank transfers, etc. But then you would be in the manufacturing business. Now you just click. You click. You go at Alibaba. You search. I want to get DC brushed motors of a certain dimension, certain shaft length. Who makes those kind of motors? They have an IM client that translates in real time between English and Chinese. They are on all the time. You say, "Do you make this motor? Can you make this motor?" They say, "Yes, we already make it. Here's what it costs in various volumes." "No, we can't make it," or "We make something like it, and we can custom make it for you." And you say, "Yes, fine, whatever." They take PayPal. They take credit cards. And you upload your specs. If it's a fabrication thing, you upload your CAD/CAM and your SketchUp, your SolidWorks file, whatever. 10 days later, there's a sample that shows up on your doorstep by FedEx. You're like, "Looks good. I'll order 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or 10 million." Type, click, 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 poof. You've now got robots in China to work for you by simply clicking. You don't have to go anywhere. And what's amazing about this moment is that they're now scale free. They will work at the mass and they will work at the micro. They will do 10 million and they will do 10. It's a different price. You get slightly different service, but they're now impedance matched to the individual. They're impedance matched to small business. They can work for anybody. You don't need to be a big company. You don't need to have a letter of credit. You don't need to go to China to get Chinese factories to make your stuff. This is the Internet of Things, right? This is the moment where that sort of blog turns into micromanufacturing. And it is, I believe, going to be just as empowering, if not more so. I'll explain this picture in a second, but I want to just talk a little about my personal history. My grandfather was a Swiss immigrant, really a kind of total stereotype, a watchmaker from Bern, who came to the United States and worked in Hollywood, as one did in those days, because Hollywood was a very mechanical business with lots of gears and film transports, sound recording mechanisms. So he worked as, Hollywood was like gears, and watches were like gears, and that was a good fit. And then at home, he had a little workshop in his garage. As a child, I would go and spend my summers with him, and he didn't talk much, but he could do amazing things with the metal lathe, and the curlicues would pile up, and a block of, in the same way a sculptor takes a block of marble and chips away the bits that aren't the person, he would take a block of steel and sort of machine away the parts that weren't a force-stroke engine. And it was extraordinary to watch, and while I was there, he invented the automatic sprinkler system. That was the source of my family's very modest fortune. But in those days, if you invented something awesome like the automatic sprinkler system, the only way to get to market was to patent it and then to license the patent to a company who would, a factory, who would then basically do their own thing. They would, you'd lost the control of your technology. You might get ripped off in terms of the economics, but that was just the way to do it. There was no way for an individual to get to market without going through a big company. What's interesting today is if he were to invent this equivalent today, as I'll explain in a minute, I do and people like me do, you don't need to patent and license. You would make it yourself. He would go to Alibaba. He would have the parts manufactured. They'd be assembled by another company. They'd be drop shipped, and he would have not been an inventor. He'd be an entrepreneur, and he would have maintained control and economics and all that sort of thing. It would have been a very different and probably superior process. The picture here I'm showing you is a screenshot from a movie called Flash of Genius, which is a movie about the invention of the intermittent windshield wiper. Those of you, everything had to be invented once, and there was once a time when windshield wipers went but whether it was raining hard or not. A guy in his basement invented a little timer circuit that went shh, shh, and could pause. He then decided that he wanted to go from inventor to entrepreneur. And he made a huge mistake, which is that he wanted to own his own destiny. He wanted to maintain control. The only way he could do that is to create his own factory. And so he mortgages he takes a second mortgage on his house, he rents space, he starts the assembling of a factory, forklifts, assembly lines, all this kind of stuff. Years go by, second year, third year. After the fourth year, this factory's still not done, he's mortgaged to the hilt, it's a rainy day, he walks out of his factory to go home. The 1964 Chevy Mustangs, Ford Mustangs rather, are turning the corner to be unveiled at the big press conference in the rain, and the windshield wipers go shh, shh. And he realizes that his idea has been stolen, he is ruined, bankrupt, he goes crazy, and the movie then proceeds very entertainingly on. The good news, by the way, is in real life, he, almost 20 years later, he successfully sued for patent infringement. At any rate, it was a bad 2 decades for this man because because in those days, to manufacture, you needed to have a factory. That is no longer true. Today, obviously, same deal. Just like my grandfather might if he were born today, you invent the intermittent windshield wiper, you then sort of say, okay, well, what are the components? We've got a printed circuit board, we've got a motor, we've got some gears, we've got some standard wiper structures. Who makes that? Can they make it for me? Can they customize this bit? Can they package it? Can they drop ship it? And he would have been in business and selling to GM before GM could, if they so wanted, rip them off. It would have been, he would have just, his smallness would have been an asset, not a liability, because he could get to market more quickly, because he didn't have to build the factory. And therein is the Internet of Things.